The Egg, Part 1, The Papers, The Prologue. Many of you know me from my infamous implementation of the Incunabula Ongshat interactive fiction experiments. I have taken the last few years to examine the results, revisit and refine the methodologies, and replicate or attempt to replicate those results. Most of the experiments I conducted after I called for a game over in 2000 to the Incunabula Ongshat live fiction experiment were conducted in secret, with the exception of El Centro, which was a fun diversion that netted us some wonderful talent that we continue to work with to this day. Later, people would take up the methods I pioneered and use them to create a whole new genre of fiction game crossover known as alternate reality gaming, or ARG. For more information on this, see chapters of This Is Not a Game by my friend Dave Sobolski, which is offered for free on incunabula.org, or you may buy the book This Is Not a Game at booksellers everywhere. Today, I begin a 3-year journey of exploration, reflection, and interpretation by starting with a story that begins at the beginning, ends with the present, so we can go back to the beginning again. In conjunction with an audiobook version of the Incunabula and Ongshat canon being released as a freeware Creative Commons edition, I present Part 1 of The Egg, The Papers. The Egg is a live fiction work in 3 acts. You may keep up with it at theeggmovie.com. And no, I won't tell you what it's all about, you're just going to have to experience it. The beginning is Santa Cruz, 1986. I begin with Pan, a man who I used to see on the Pacific Garden Mall, standing almost daily in front of the Logos bookstore, holding a staff, wearing Mickey Mouse ears and a black foam nose, speaking of things thelemic and magical, that's magical with a K. Later, in 1991, I moved to San Francisco, and I began to see Pan in the Haight District. A coincidence, but not dense enough to be a synchronicity. Fast forward to 2004, and I'm walking down the street in my current hometown of Santa Barbara, and who should I see? Okay, now it's a synchronicity. I approach him, and the following video is the culmination of conversations we've had on tape. Well, I should say maybe a monologue that I taped. Originally, I planned to call this segment, Who is Pan and Why is he following me around? But after speaking to Pan, he informed me that according to the dates we arrived at in the same towns, it is in fact I who is following he. So be it. Now I present The Egg, Part 1, The Papers, The Prologue, titled Pan and Me.
Barney Stone, Rabbit's Foot, 4-leaf clover, mandrake root, shooting star, number 7, last to hell but first to heaven, potions sold, fortunes told, lucky symbols, numbers, names. Come and join our playground games. Laughing, whirling, spurred, and spinning in this game, you're always winning. Oh, how chance that you are here, and lucky us that we may share with you the little that we know. It's been said that if one gathers one's dream's desire, stirring it in a pool of moonlight, fragrant blossoms will spring forth, rich with the scent of fertile tales and the promise of an undiscovered land. So gather now your anxious visions, triumphant melodies, rich milk of childhood dairies, and we shall build a wishing pool. Together, we shall conjure a doorway, a gateway to remembrance. Let the whirling hands pull back the fabric of this place, for it seems the world has gone to sleep. And dreams disturbing dreams. Winding up the crank screw grinding, building team asunder pining, steam asunder pining, joining with the always knowing, matters not to where we're going. Brightly shining pool in stone, deliver us desire's bone. The fates entreat, the muse awaits, the cycle turning will complete. Round and round it always goes, and where it stops, all our lives are on the spin. So come and hear the tale herein. There's magic in the telling. Spoken round it harks the knelling. Creation's confidence will make. And then at last, shall we awake? Hoo-hoo! He stirs. The alchemist stirs. Anyway, a little bit of folly there for filming. Is that okay?
That's great.
If name has granted me this opportunity to go ahead and throw myself, so to speak, on the mercy of the court, to make a plea. I don't know quite how to introduce all of this. I sort of experience myself as being somewhat of an anomaly. Aleister Crowley plays a role in this. There's something that they call the magical child of Aleister Crowley. There's a lot to do about that. And this child basically is prophesied to discover the key of it all. And I think Crowley himself understood basically the full implications of the child discovering such a thing and what this child might apply this thing to, and end up basically discovering. So, very few people seem to know, I'll call him my magical father, very few people seem to know this being very well. But he was probably more Christian-oriented, if you can imagine such a thing, than most suspect. It's interesting that the OTO usually won't mention his book on Jesus. But I wanted to show you something. Well, he says that in the formula of Tetragrammaton, in the Book of Thoth, it sort of spelled out that a pattern or an image of what you'd call a period of a matriarchal age, when ascent or descent to the throne was not through the firstborn son of the king, but through the queen's daughter. And that the way the rules were set up, that at any time, you know, the queen's daughter came of age, then there would be an open tournament declared throughout the land, and all those who would like to compete for her hand were welcome to enter that tournament. All right. Now this could be seen as something like King of the Mountain. It's interesting how this applies to the formula of Tetragrammaton. We'll leave that out for the moment, but this something applies to the King of the Mountain, where you might say the queen is the soul of the world, and the King of the Mountain is determined to the nature of the structure or the shape of this substance, this essence. And like the Roman Catholic Empire at one time when it was in its full heyday. You know. Evolution, however, likes to continue to experiment with form and continue to refine itself. And so when a form becomes too cumbersome, then evolution is in a position where it would like to deform. And that's when it's said that the queen gives birth to a daughter. I suppose in the Roman Catholic Empire that new form took place when Luther rose up, or when, you know, you name them. And you saw all the schisms that occurred as a result of that rising. And in essence, what that meant was that the old king has sort of lost it. It's become too feeble to continue to maintain its sway. And it is when the old king becomes somewhat feeble that the queen gives birth to a daughter, and then the daughter would be the future shape of the world, you might say. And that's when the open tournament is declared, and all these new conceptions enter into that fray, and fight to the death to try to basically, I guess it's the arena of logic and reason, I would hope, to see who would be the suitor for her hand. And these are all the concepts of what that are struggling right now in the world. You might say that the combat that's going on over who will decide the fate of this world. Crowley has it that there's something old in the political game, even, and there's some kind of shenanigans going on, that there's something divine going on, and that as the fairy tale has it, that after this this tournament is well into progress. All these powers vying for ultimate. Well, there's a son of a king of another realm who apparently has credentials, secret credentials, or secret letters of introduction, or what they say, but I call them credentials. And that it's somewhat of a fixed race in essence, but that this entity basically is disguised in some kind of repulsive form, enters into the tournament at the last moment, and then throws off his disguise and somehow, I don't know, makes his way all the way to the top. It's not enough just to win the tournament. In order to be able to take the place of the old king, the last thing you have to do is face that reality and slay it. Ultimately, the conception of reality. And then, well, it's the same old game, but only in this case it's a transcendent promise and a fulfillment of, I suppose, everything that's precious. To give you an idea, Crowley's magical child was said to, first he was trying to invoke this entity or into being, whether it was just a ray or a spark of this entity, some extraterrestrial intelligence, that it would be designed basically to fulfill his bidding. And I can tell you what his bidding was, and it is in the statement. Not only that love is the law, love under will, but it is a statement that the rapture of art is the triumph of love in its most universal comprehension. I would say that would be the fulfillment of his desire, or as he said in the Adept, that for you I built this fairy dome of words and crowned it with the cross of my desire. This magical child, according to Kenneth Grant, basically is purposed, right, to serve the master's purpose. And he says, the master says that to have corn of so subtle a seed once, and I'll say that's a reference to Christ, is a marvelous thing. But to achieve it twice were to be a mark of powers so wondrous that we doubt whether there be one man born in 10,000 times 10,000 generations that hath such wonder power. Now, I don't know if those are familiar with you, but I cut my teeth on this. Let's see if this works. And you can verify this for yourself. And I will reveal something to you that I've shared with the OTO, as ignorant as I feel that they are. And they may have gotten it or not gotten it. If you heard it, you heard it from me, because you'll never have heard it before that. Sharing with them. And in the Book of Lies, which is also, I don't know if you're aware of it, it happens to be what they called the Torah. The Jews called the Torah in the ancient days, falsely so called. So there's this chapter 91. Now if you count the two veils, right? I guess 3 veils or something. 2 veils, it would be 93, I guess. Chapter 91. What's fascinating about this is there's the number of the chapter. Of course, you didn't know every number has its significance. Here's the title of the chapter. No, excuse me. Yeah, the title of the chapter. And here is the chapter itself. All right. Then below that, of course, the commentary. That was all that existed at one time before it was insisted that the commentary be written. All right. Here's what's funny about that. Is in the commentary, we'll say, well, what's the Heikel? In essence, well, we might have gotten a clue about that from Oscar Eckenstein, but I guess he's no longer available. That's a teaser. And so it remains a mystery, but the essential nature of the Heikel, it represents the coming out of his that has wandered long in the darkness. Yes. And this is apparently, according to L. Astor, this is apparently the crowning achievement. The magnum opus, the coronat opus. All right? So let's see what's being said here. very few may know, but 91 is actually the numeration for one of Kamal, or Kamael, excuse me, I'll put that in there, but it's actually, when you spell it, it's just, C-K-M-A-L, that's in the Hebrew, yes, all right, and the Gematria reveals that Kamal, by the way, is what is called the head seraph. And so here's where a flaming serpent comes into play here. The head seraph. And the seraph is, of course, of the order of the seraphim. And the seraphim is called the order of highest living angels. Flaming serpents, this is seraphim, means high order of highest living angels. All right? And a seraph is above a cherub. A seraph can take a cherub. So, Kamal actually is 20, 40, 1, 30, 91. Okay? What's 91 mean? 91 is what is called, there are lots of plays here with your gematria, but 91 is what is called the magical extension of the number 13. Emanation of the number 13, because you go 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 plus 9 plus 10 plus 11 plus 12 plus 13. The veil for the, you-know-who, the fish, and it means you must die to be reborn again. It is the 13th, the 13th is of the 12. Excuse me. All right. And it all adds plus 13, 91. All right. Ramen is, what else is doing in a satanic situation? Amen, basically, when you realize what it is actually, it's no terracon. We'll have to scratch out the E here, and I'll show you why. It's no terracon is 1, 40, 50, 91. All right? And what this means, well, before I get to that, let's take the Heikel for a moment. Since we scratched out the E, because the Heikel is a mystery, let's take the E's out of the Heikel. And what do we got? We got 5, 10, 20, 30. We've got 65. Ooh, let's make that L, V, X. Let's make that Lux. All right? That is the mystery of the Heikel. And it is spelled out, Lux, well, Amen, is a notericon, all right, for the phrase, and I don't know how this ever got lost, but it's in there. You can find it, I think, if you dig deeply enough. It is for a phrase that was always used at the end of every supplication or prayer, or at the beginning of every supplication and prayer, and it was to directly say, Adonai, Melech, Namen. And it means, in the name of the faithful Lord and King. And Adonai, as you know, A-D-N-I, in its Hebrew, is 65, who is the height. And this is a reference to his, coming out of his, that has wandered along in the darkness. All right? Can I do it here on these? Okay. Now we move, and keep that in mind, a little light in the darkness, cor not opus, final mystery is always insoluble, and I can break that one down to alpha now, my star Y is in, F, never mind. It's an interesting thing, but let's jump, because we're here in this stream, then let's jump to the chapter 11. So the magical mirror, there's also a looking glass and a reflection of it now. Number of magic, right? And in number 11, Book of Lies, it is given that it's called the glowworm. which is defined as a little light in the darkness. Ooh. And then we have a reference to this light, and it is cast down through the abyss is the light. The rapture of union which destroys, which is the way. Which is the rosy cross. The rosy cross is the ambassador of all, or Pan. All right. Cast down through the abyss is the rosy cross. We'll look at that one up yourself. Anyway, there's your reference to the glowworm. It is the way, and oh hell, I should get that out and do this properly. Let's leave that alone for a moment. Let's go to number 36 then. This is a fascinating one. All right. The rosy cross is the ambassador of Pan. The rapture of union that destroys. That's right. 36 is star sapphire. I don't know how many know that, but the sapphire is what a sephiroth ultimately means. Sephiroth, the sapphire. Star sapphire. In this case, it's number, on the tree of life, of course, it's number 6. All right. 36 is what you call that light times itself, therefore the squaring of that light into manifestation, or into an energy. And a star sapphire, what's interesting about this is that, there's the reference, we have basically set pronounces the tetragrammaton, the father, mother, son and daughter letters from every possible angle. In other words, in Ararita, I won't tell you what Ararita means. I'll keep that a secret for the moment. But that's basically, you know, to be able to demonstrate that are one, that the father and the mother are one in the godlight, so to speak, and that the son and the daughter are one, and doing it from all angles. Of course, you have to be able to pronounce the name to do that. And then after that's done, which is to say that the entity basically exhibits or demonstrates the mastery of the unpronounceable name and in that pronunciation. And then it says, finally, toward the end, that let him then return to the center of all, and let him then make the signs of the rosy cross, as he knows how. And in this, in his name, Set, and in his father's name, Elaster, he will prove triumphant. All right? So, this is something to do with the nature of what is represented as the magical child of Aleister Crowley. And the said child, essentially, well, I'll jump from here to there. I'll say that I am Amen. I am the Rosy Cross. I am he who has come in the name of Christ, who is sent by the Father, who is Paraclete and Comforter, and that my purpose, and the only way which I can actually basically demonstrate myself, is to be able to explain all things soever, and that includes all the greater Judeo-Christian mysteries, the source of all religions in the world soever. We'll take science a step forward, cutting-edge physics. We can reconcile all of that in one of the most harmonious, sweetest kind of experiences or realizations you could possibly ever imagine. And that's my claim. It's almost like a gauntlet thrown down. And my purpose is, of course, the great work. And this was the purpose of the magical child. It is to raise all humanity to the summit of its spiritual attainment. To me, the great work is the initiation of the entire collective consciousness of the planet into its next major phase of evolutionary development. And I suppose it had to become critical in order for us to be willing to go ahead and consider an option, which is hitherto an unknown factor. which we didn't have to consider. I guess it's no one's at fault for that. And it seems strange, but it looks like I'm the bearer of this either glad tidings or disturbing news. My purpose is to feed all the children, take the Roman Catholic Empire to task and the assistance to do that by breaking its bank for the sake of all the children starving to death in the world who are suffering an even much crueler form of abortion in its shadow. I would love to open up all the houses in Christendom to families in the street who have no place to lay their head and let Sunday services serve. My hope is to go ahead and I think I can show you how we can do that, is go ahead and actually return our government to us, we the people, and in doing so perhaps find a way to reconcile all governments and end all enmities, because if in fact there is such a thing as the key of it all, well then that will be what it should provide. And all of this ultimately geared toward, and I'm talking about, restoring the garden with a martial vengeance. See, divided like Osiris right now, we're in pieces, but you know what? If we were to put all these pieces together, we would find that we have all omniscience and that we got all we need together. If we were really find a way to come together, we have all that we require in order to take care of every problem that we've got. And almost all the problems in the world are psychological. So, this is my purpose anyway. And in order to do that, I guess I'd sort of say that, well, I do have a plan, a step-by-step, etc. I would say that there are no real options in the world. I don't know if you know how critical our situation is. There are no other options that I'm aware of that are going to take us anywhere where we would like to go anytime soon. And so I'm saying this is coming from outside the box, perhaps. I'm looking for those who are desperate for any possibility at all of really making a hair's breadth of a difference in this universe. And I was looking for true romantics. All these things can be done. And it is for the reason, and of course they say the hardest thing in the universe is to know thyself, and then of course the easiest thing is to advise another. And I submit that there's something that has been lost to us, which is a genuine thing. All religions in the world have sort of intuited it, and all of them, like Campbell would say, it's not like a journey along a certain path toward the union with our source, whatever we may call that, and of course then some kind of an ultimate transformation and an actual, I guess what's called an arrival, you might say, into something much grander, much more, well, supernatural. Wouldn't that be nice? And so in essence here, what I've got is, just for the moment done with this, I'd love to really continue because I could do this for hours. I thought if I were going to show you the key, in fact, I could do this in such a way where I could step out of the way and just simply begin to quote the true masters, and I put them in such an order that by the time I'm done, with hardly myself adding a thing, boy, is it an indelible experience, and do you have a new way of looking at yourself and thinking of the world. It's transformative. I understand that there may be a few talk show hosts and other things like that, you know, and having talked to If now, name, I'm in agreement that it's not really communicating this key here in this form or this fashion. I don't want to let it get loose. I'd like to use it as what you'd call an engine of war. And with it we might smite peoples and give birth to an ultimate child. All right, and so I'm looking for those revolutionary men. I don't want to be on a talk show host. I'm looking for allies, cohorts, you know, I mean, co-conspirators. This is so. Here's the ultimate kind of reality, as I understand it. That what the situation we're in is that we see that that the world itself was corrupted, basically by humanity's fall due to some error. All right, that the purpose of religion is to redeem us from this fall through the metaphysical reconciliation of our consciousness with the precondition of its existence. For this, what is required is what I guess the Zadics would call the zalim, or what Philamites might call it, or you might call it the word of the aeon. It can be summed up in one word. What is required is a cosmological image of such a kind where we can see how all parts actually stem out of and so figure into a greater ultimate reality of being, right? And through which we can see that all parts then act as facets or expressions or agents of what we call, what we recognize now then to be a greater, higher spiritual truth. All right? In other words, what is required is a way of seeing the world in which the presence of